Today we're going to talk about why reflection is progression's closest friend, coming up. Hey everybody, it's Travis Vroman. For those of you who are new to this channel, I upload videos with tips, tricks, and industry advice for game developers. So if this sounds like something that interests you, consider subscribing. So today we're going to talk about why reflection is the closest friend of progression. What I mean by this is, in order to move forward with things, especially your skills, you need to understand what has worked and what hasn't worked. And we've kind of talked about this a little bit before on this channel. But one point that I really wanted to drive home is, if you never stop at some point in your path of progression in whatever skill it is that you're trying to learn, whether that be game development or something else, if you never stop and reflect on what you've done in the past, what of those things has worked and what hasn't, eventually it becomes very difficult for you to continue. Reflection in general is one of the ways that we learn. One of the reasons that they say that studying right before you go to sleep is a good idea is because that is what's on your brain when you go to sleep, and you wind up sometimes dreaming about that thing. And that's your brain's way of sort of reflecting on the events of the day. That is one of the best ways, at least for me, to retain information on something, to retain knowledge that I've gained, is to sort of go over it towards the end of the day and sort of recite to myself what I've learned. Without taking that time to reflect on what has worked and what hasn't worked, you can't improve on how you actually learn. So it might seem a little bit counterintuitive, but one of the things about learning is you actually have to learn how to learn. Let's take, for example, programming. You learn the basic concepts of programming, and then you learn a language. From there, you learn how to expand that into other aspects of it. In order to get there, however, you have to actually understand how to learn a language. And this isn't something that I think is really covered all that often, and it's something that I didn't discover until years down the road, that I'd been learning new languages and new technologies the hard way. Because everybody has a different style of learning, right? So some people learn from books, some people learn from YouTube videos, some people learn from actually doing it themselves. A lot of people, it's a combination of those things. But if you never stop to reflect on how you learned something, and the speed at which you learned it, and the accuracy of which you learned it, and the efficiency even, if you never stop to think about those things, you're never going to find the best way to learn. So it's for that reason that I say that reflection is progression's closest friend, is because in order to progress past a certain point, you need to stop and reflect. You need to take a minute or take 10 minutes and actually reflect on what you've learned in order to help it stick up here. So if you don't do that, chances are it's not going to stick as much. Another example of this, just to sort of drive the point home, is when you're learning to spell things as a kid in school. One of the things that the teachers make you do is write it out repeatedly. And the reason that they make you do that is because it has been proven that writing something out is a way to reflect on it and drive it into your brain to learn it, because you're actually you're performing a physical activity that is helping you reinforce that knowledge. I personally think that writing down my experiences or recording my experiences like I do here is a fantastic way to reflect, because you're physically doing something. You can sit at the end of the day and think about it, and that works for a lot of people, but it doesn't work for everybody. It doesn't really work for me. If I sit at the end of the day and just think about it without actually writing it down or reflecting those thoughts and experiences to a camera or something like that, it never sticks as well for me. Regardless, performing that act of reflection is ultimately what winds up making it stick in your mind. So the point I'm trying to make here is, whenever you're trying to learn something new, stop and reflect often. Understand what it is that you're trying to learn, and learn how to learn by reflecting. Remember that reflection is progression's closest friend. So that's all I've really got on this topic. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, consider subscribing, and I will see you guys later.